A new report from UNESCO's International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence has revealed discrepancies in terms of gender representation. According to the report, generative AI's outputs associate feminine names with traditional gender roles, generative's negative context about gay subjects, and assign stereotype professions to members of different genders and ethnic groups. For more on this, I am joined by Dr. Laura Fisher, who's the head of Institutional Advancement at Boston City campus. Dr. Fisher, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, how do you perceive the current state of AI bias within institutional decision-making processes, especially in areas like welfare, health, and social services?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that AI has been transformative, particularly in these sectors. But as you speak and say, what about the institutional decision-making processes? I think that's where we really need to remain cognizant of the potential for bias in AI-driven institutional decision-making processes. There's great promises that AI brings, but there's also potential pitfalls, with research showing a staggering 88% of AI developers are male. I mean, that in and of itself is going to lead to possible bias in technology design. And this is a global challenge because systems are being trained, may reflect and exacerbate existing social biases. And then within our context, it's also a challenge in that it might amplify past prejudices affecting welfare, health, and social services allocation.
Can you elaborate on the challenges that civil society organizations face in really addressing AI bias, particularly in Europe, as highlighted in your research?
Yeah, so civil society organizations in Europe and in South Africa, actually, are equally facing significant challenges in addressing the AI bias. Firstly, obviously, there's the intricate nature of AI, which creates a barrier as it requires a really specialized understanding of AI itself. So that, brings a bit of a challenge in terms of the resources and the manpower, the skills, the finances, and they're often lacking. So that is an inhibiting efforts to monitor and control AI bias. And then thirdly, I'd say kind of the transnational operations of many tech companies make the regulation challenging due to differing levels of compliance, regulation, and enforcement across operational territories. So I think these challenges are pretty daunting for civil society organizations. That would be my kind of take on that.
So how effective do you believe the recently passed Artificial Intelligence Act in Europe will be in actually regulating AI systems to also prevent systematic threats, if you will, and protect citizens from potential misuse?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, obviously, any act that's going to represent a legislative kind of outcome is a big milestone. So aiming to regulate AI systems, prevent systemic threats and protect citizens from potential misuse, theoretically is really great. However, it always depends on several factors. There's a really great podcast called Impossible by Reid Hoffman. And Hoffman says, the concept of adaptability and constant evolution are central to entrepreneurship, but also they are central in AI regulation. So, you can put rules in place, but actually, it's not just about the rules, it's also about the game player. So the game player compliance and the referee enforcement are all crucial factors. So the efficacy really of the act hinges on the significance of the rigor with which it's administered and complied to. And I think that's where, some of the challenges lie. So how effective is it? There's two different schools of thought. Some will say, yes, it's a great milestone that we have this legislation in place. But also, all legislation is open to being disputed and being abused.
So in your opinion, what role should civil society organizations then play in actually holding AI accountable for its decisions and really advocating for algorithmic justice?
Yeah, I mean, I can't reiterate enough the role that civil society organizations play in ensuring AI accountability. Their job is to set ethical standards, spotlight injustice, and prompt discussions about AI systems' fairness and transparency. Particularly for us, this becomes really vital in the South African context. We need organizations, civil society, to act as protective guardians, making sure that these powerful AI systems don't enhance inadvertently social inequalities that we've made so many strides to, bring parity to. So we want to really make sure that AI is acting as an avenue for widespread equality rather than not. So civil society organizations, in my opinion, stand bravely on the front lines, serving as the guardians of our collective values and the realms of AI. And they ensure that these systems that are very powerful and very transformative don't foster or cement existing societal inequalities, but rather bring about a more just and equitable society for all. So just as civil society dare challenge and change the power dynamics at play, we're called to really, stand for what we believe in. It's not a tech issue in that sense. It's actually a social issue. We're all responsible to contribute to a fair, equitable, and beneficial society that is something that we all live in. It's not just the tech space.
Dr. Fisher, could you share some insights with our viewers from the Human Error Project regarding the perception of AI errors as both the technological and the systematic social issues?
Yeah, I mean, the Human Error Project is a fascinating project because it brilliantly highlights how AI errors are not necessarily mere technological mistakes, but as you say, they can be reflections of deeper systemic social biases. One really striking example of this is overviewed in a fascinating documentary on Netflix called Coded Bias, where a scholar unveiled significant racial and gender biases in commonly used facial technology, facial recognition technology. So these tools had excelled at identifying white male faces, but faltered when it came to darker skinned female individuals. The error was like a 35% error margin. So, the implications of this kind of thing are really, really profound and substantial, given the increasing adoption of something like facial recognition in law enforcement, surveillance, and hiring practices. So misidentification, can lead to a disturbing array of injustices. So the Human Error Project underlines for us the importance of AI being held accountable and not being just left to its own devices, but we need to make sure and check its biases and ensure that they're not perpetuating social inequalities. And we can't just say it's a technical snag, because it's really a manifestation of ingrained social disparities, actually.
Quite interesting. And I guess it also then begs the question as to what strategies do you think are most effective for really raising, call it public awareness about the use of AI in decision-making processes and also its potential biases here?
Yeah, I think that the raising public awareness is there isn't one silver bullet. I think we, first of all, can always utilize the strong school and higher education networks to incorporate AI literacy in education curriculums. For example, at Boston City Campus, we have a range of distance programs from short learning courses through to degrees and postgrad degrees that would enlighten students about this. so we can educate. We can provide public forum and dialogue, both physical and digital, so that we can get community engagement around these things and demystify AI and explain how it is used in everyday decision-making processes and the implications of this. And then I think just collaboration with the media outlets could be more beneficial, because I think they really have the power to present AI implications in more accessible language, reaching a wider audience. So infographics, documentaries, interviews, panel discussions, all of those can be leveraged to really deliver these crucial messages. But it's definitely a multifaceted approach in my view. We have to raise awareness. And we have to do that across our diverse population, promoting understanding and fostering meaningful discussion.
But how can civil society organizations then effectively challenge the dominant power of big tech in really shaping AI policies and regulations as well?
These are really big questions. I just want to say that to all the listeners. Civil society organizations, often we think, well, what can I do? I'm just one individual. But really, civil society is when we all stand together and we can bring about change. We can advocate. We can have influence, and we can hold AI policies and regulations accountable. So we need to understand that civil society, it's us. We represent diverse interests and values. So we need to advocate, each one of us in our own way, for inclusive and fair AI regulations that influence policy making by providing counterpoints to big tech narratives, and hold these tech narratives accountable for their AI algorithms. In South Africa, the implications are significant. I was thinking, if we don't hold them accountable, then, if AI started generating a whole lot of algorithms about who can access healthcare, for example, it could have a really devastating effect on our country. So civil society organizations need to push for AI innovations that reflect our diverse society and contribute to positively impacting lives. Technology needs to correctly represent us. It is a tool in our hands. We are not a tool in its hands.
Very interesting discussion. That's Dr. Laura Fisher, of course, speaking to us about this discussion. She's the head of Institutional Advancement at Boston City Campus.